Everyone. Today we're going to work on writing better academic essays, which sounds crucifyingly boring, doesn't it? And it probably will be. I guess the benefit of this video setup is that you get to do this in manageable chunks, actually. So you don't have to sit there for an hour and 20 minutes of horror. Sort of joking on one side, I mean, I think that obviously this is important for your university careers, and I hope that what we look at in the next hour is going to be helpful to you, and helpful not just in this class, but in the writing of all your academic essays, certainly in the humanities. In this course, I suppose it all culminates in the research essay. I think I handed this out to you a couple of weeks ago, or at least I put it on eLearn. But let's just bring it up on the screen now and have a look at this. Experience tells me that I need to do this. So this needs to be 4 pages in length, not including your works cited page. And I mean double-spaced. No longer than 4 pages. So why do I say that? It's partly because you need to get used to writing to limits. It's also actually, would you believe, an ethical matter, really. I mean, my duty of care is to teach all of you, or treat all of you in the same way. So why should I read your 8-page paper when everyone else has struggled to get it into 4? And that's the point. It should be a struggle. You should be deleting and editing and whittling stuff down in a way that can be quite frustrating, but that should be the challenge here. Okay, so as it says here in the first paragraph, you are expected to use proper MLA citations, and you see that you can elect for APA if that's going to suit you better. But one or the other, and actually on the front page, just indicates what you have selected for. Okay, we need to have at least 4 separate academic research sources. You can obviously refer to more if you want to. And if you don't do that, then you haven't fulfilled the requirement of the assignment and you can fail. Hopefully by now you know what an academic source is, having gone through your library session. And that's what we deal with here in the next paragraph. Now then, let's just have a look at the topics. You've got a choice of 3. So there's a political speech, an advertising campaign, or a song lyric. Topic number 1, find a political speech. You analyze the language being used. Actually, the next video is going to help you with that, for sure. And then you broaden out your analysis just to bring in a research question that you can thrash out. And I've given you some sort of ideas here. This is, I think, the most challenging of the 3 topics. And a word to the wise, do not choose a speech by Hitler. Do not choose a speech by Churchill. Not because they're not great for analysing language, of course they are, but because you will have a hell of a job actually introducing a proper argument into a 4-page essay on those 2 politicians. So I would go for something more contemporary and something perhaps issue-based that matters to you, and which you could then research. A good example that I've had recently was an essay on the speech given by Franklin D. Roosevelt just after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Second World War. So to begin with, the student analysed the speech itself. This is where it's a famous speech, this day will live in infamy and so on and so forth. So clever rhetorically, and a lot of the stuff I'm about to give you in the next video on political language is useful in analysing the speech itself. But what the student then did was broaden out his paper to actually address the question of whether Roosevelt knew in advance about the attack on Pearl Harbor. It seems as though the British knew, but did Roosevelt know? There's a certain amount of debate among historians about this. And then there is perhaps the even more interesting question of what if he did know? Because in a sense that made the whole speech a lie, but then was it a necessary lie? And we're moving towards ethics. So you can see how this built into an actually really very good paper. Okay, number 2 here, maybe more along your street. So you find an advertisement or a campaign, analyze the use of language in the way that we have been doing in the video. How is it pushing? How is it selling, basically? And then just broaden out your analysis to start dealing with a question pertaining to that advert. Students sometimes write to me and say, can I choose one advert, or does it have to be, it can be anything you like, really anything you like. It can be a whole campaign or just a single magazine, whatever works for you is fine with me. But you must be finding a question you can ask about it. So let me try and give you another good example. A student did an essay on the, well, what she did was she contrasted adverts for 2 different types of vehicles. So she chose a kind of Ferrari sports car, whatever it was, and then a hybrid utility vehicle. And you can just imagine how the rhetoric is different and how the metaphors are different in both of these adverts. So she explored that very well, and then she went to her arguments, which of course she set up in her thesis to begin with. And her argument was that this whole business, selling us, promoting hybrid vehicles, is bogus because of the sort of toxic footprint in creating a hybrid vehicle in the first place. This is where she introduced statistics, academic research, and she, pursued her own, or navigated her way through this, and came up with her own conclusion. And I'm reading this thinking, holy shit, this is really interesting, and I learned quite a lot reading this paper. A simpler one you might want to go for if you're struggling with this topic would be something like the beer commercial, and the way that women are portrayed in some of the beer commercials, and whether you find that acceptable or not. And so you can see how you could focus on the message, the construction of the message, and then broaden out your analysis to then weigh up the question of whether we have an objectification of women in these adverts, which is harmful or not, and bring in quotes and statistics in that part of your essay. So it's kind of 2 essays in one. That's the sneaky thing about it, and I've done it deliberately. It's part rhetorical analysis and part critical thinking and research. Number 3, I guess, is what you might go for if you just want to get out of English 100 and move on. If this whole course is a complete bloody nightmare and you hate the thought of writing a research paper, you might want to go with number 3. That's not to say you can't get an A+. I've had some excellent essays analysing hip-hop songs, and by the way, it doesn't have to be hip-hop, it could be any song at all, right? The point is, you take me to the song that you choose because it's going to help you make your argument. So many students get this the wrong way round, especially when I'm workshopping this in class. They say to me, oh Ian, I want to write about this song because I really like it. And, and I say, okay, well, what's your argument? And they're like, blank. Oh, I just like it. It's not enough, guys. It's not going to do it, all right? The reason you take me to the song or the advert or the political speech is so that it will help you make your argument. That's the way around you need to put this. So if you're going to do a song, think about an argument first. And it could be anything. The obvious one here, and it's really good to do because there's a lot of research you can find on this, academic research, is whether gangster rap, hip hop, is good or bad for the youth of today? So there's your question, right? That's the question you can research, trying to put your brain in neutrals until you get some actual information. And there are all sorts of case studies that have been done on this, right? So you do your research, you navigate through it, and you arrive at your own opinion. Then you take me to a song which is going to help you make your point, either because you think this stuff is harmful, or people say it is, but it isn't really, and it can actually say something really important and useful. And then how would you construct your essay? Well, you introduce the essay, the topic, your song, with a thesis, and then you move first into analyzing how the language is being used to communicate the message on the part of the writer of the song. And then perhaps page 2, you start turning to the argument and sort of weigh up the counterpoints and then come to a conclusion. That's what I suggest you might want to do here. And as I say at the bottom, right? So the starting point is reading. It's no good just having feelings at university, certainly not in my class, or opinions. You need to be informed. You need to make yourself informed first, and then I'm prepared to listen to you or read what you have to say. Okay? Due date. I guess you want to know when this is due. It's due at the end of week 13, which is actually going to be the end of English 100, because we don't have an exam in this course. So whatever the end of week 13 is, that's when I need you to send me your research essay. What I want to do now is work through at least some elements of the CAP guide to writing, which I'm assuming that you have purchased and have as an online text. Plenty of really useful stuff here, and I'm going to rely on you to go through it mostly in your own time. This stuff about getting started, pages 5 to 12. What I do want to go is page 12 first. Let's just do that quickly. Okay, selecting the right sources. So I just alluded to this. This is the difference between scholarly or academic and popular material. I don't really want to labor that today because I think you've done this with the library, okay? And it's pretty bloody obvious, frankly. I think the main point is this one they make in the first box here. So the general purpose of journals or academic writing is to communicate research information in a particular discipline or field, as against the general purpose of magazines, newspaper, blog, stuff like that, is to communicate information likely to interest readers and to make a profit. And you know, that's not what academics are about. I mean, they get paid by their universities, right? But that's not, you know, what the actual publication is trying to do. So keep that in mind, and I think it will help you. What I want to do now is trip down to page 18. Yeah, here we are, note-taking and annotating. I think I mentioned this briefly in our very first video. Before you begin reading, get in the habit of taking the following steps. And I think this is a good point. You need to note down all the information you're going to need for works cited or references, MLA or APA. And you need to figure out your own system. There's a reference here to Zotero, RefWorks, EndNotes. Maybe you can check that out. You know, if you're using online material and scrolling through it, maybe this software will help you take notes. Well, I suppose it's no surprise to you, but I don't do that. What I do is use a sheet of A4 paper and I read hard copy. I just simply find that better. And I think it might actually be better even now. Um, so you read something, you annotate it, and then on a single sheet of A4, write down everything you need for the MLA or APA, and then the quote itself or the statistic. And so you can then put aside the book or the journal or article, whatever, and you just have one sheet of A4 with everything you're going to need. I mean, all I can tell you is how things worked for me in the past. I remember when I was writing my research degree thesis, I had sort of 3 walls of my bedroom covered in A4 sheets of paper, each one representing a different source that I'd read, and plenty on the floor too. And you know what? Even with 3, 27-inch Macs in front of you, and we don't have that, but you can't replicate just looking around the walls and the floor and being able to make these sort of instant connections. Like, he's saying this, but hang on, I remember she said, yeah, she said that, but there's some other guy who said, yeah, and now you can make these connections and start sort of building your thesis in that way, your essay in that way. So yeah, for an English 100 research essay, maybe you've got 4 pieces of A4 on your desk with all the information you need. That's the hard work, actually. Now you can just, put it all together. Anyway, you find your own way, guys. You do it your own way, of course. But for God's sake, take notes. All right, otherwise, wasting time. Yeah, you can read all this stuff. They're taking you through this. I want to go down to annotating your reading. Yeah. You can make your own personalized system of shorthand symbols. The thesis, 24. That's what I want to talk about now. I've already kind of done some work with you on this, but there's no harm in going over this again. And I think the way they put it here is actually pretty damn good. So sometimes an explicit statement of purpose and method may appear in your paper, perhaps in the introductory paragraph. For example, you might write, this research paper will examine the organization of bottle refund programs in the Lower Mainland to assess their effectiveness. So your reader can see what the paper will set out to do and will read on in order to follow your examination and conclusions with interest. Maybe not much interest, right? But here's the point. Many instructors find such statements don't go far enough. You bet, I don't at all. That's not a thesis. So what we're looking for is an argument about the topic rather than a statement about purpose and method. So in other words, a statement of purpose and method indicates what you are doing in your essay, whereas your thesis indicates what you are saying or arguing, as we put it in this course. And so, look at this formulation here. To be effective, bottle refund programs in the Lower Mainland need better promotion and improved cooperation among retailers. Bingo. Now we've got an argument. Now we've got a thesis. Okay? Every academic paper needs a thesis. It's the most important sentence or statement in your paper. It controls your paper. And I like what they say here at the bottom of 24. It should be thoughtful and interesting. Obvious or self-evident thesis statements lead to trite papers. Trite means simplistic and obvious. Okay, this is what we want to avoid. For example, I quite often get research essays on that topic number 3, the hip-hop thing, or song lyric. And I get something like this. I'm going to write about Tupac Shakur's Changes because it's a great song. And, I want to shoot myself again because this is boring. This is not a thesis. This is just a statement of taste. But what if you were to write this? I'm going to write about Tupac Shakur's Changes because while a lot of people say it's a great song, I disagree. And now, wow, that's provocative. That's surprising and interesting. Or you can flip it around. You get the point, right? You need to have an argument. Don't just give me these trite statements. And whilst I'm on this, on a bit of a tangent, talking about trite statements, try to avoid platitudes in your academic writing. These are really obvious general statements that everybody knows. So on topic number 3 again, you might get a student who begins their essay, everybody loves music. And I'm going to shoot myself. I mean, who's going to disagree with that, right? Well, maybe there is somebody out there who doesn't, right? But you get my point? These general claims about human nature are disastrous in academic essays. Get rid of the waffle, get rid of the bullshit, get down to it, all right? Introduce your topic, give me a thesis, and get on with the job, especially when you've only got 4 pages, all right? Okay. Developing the thesis. Actually, in the next video, I'm going to talk about the 5 canons of rhetoric, and they're going to help you with formulating a thesis and an argument in a paper. But by all means, read this. That will help you too. Let's see what else we got here. Drafting. Shaping the draft. Oh yeah, okay. So as a kind of general plan for your essay, once you've done your reading and thinking, you might want to just put up something like we have in this box here. So you've arrived at a thesis, and now these are going to be your main points, each one corresponding to a paragraph or 2. And as they say here, note that all the points above could easily be connected to the thesis with the word because, so that they drive the thesis. Another way of putting this is that every single paragraph in your essay, even if it's 50 pages long, should connect to that thesis in your first paragraph. You should be able to draw a line. I mean, if you can't, then delete the paragraph. It just shouldn't be there, right? They give you an example of what doesn't work. Okay. Now then, page 30, shaping paragraphs. Holy commodity. This is crucial. That there are so many essays I get with incoherent paragraphs. It's, next to some grammatical issues, it's probably the biggest problem in academic writing at our level, okay, English 100. I've mentioned to you in the past about a topic sentence. A paragraph should begin with the topic sentence. That's the main point in this box here. Eating a high-fiber diet can benefit health. That is a topic sentence. So once you create that, you then explain it, second box. You then give an example, third box. You then give another example, fourth box, and then you get the hell out of the paragraph and start another one. And just do the same thing over and over again, because you are writing academically structured paragraphs. Okay? That's it. What goes wrong is that we don't have a topic sentence. Or we do, but it's stuffed in the middle of example 1 and 2. Or we have, which is more likely or more common, we have 2 topic sentences. And the student is kind of segueing, but actually just slipping between one and the other in a very confusing way. So that's what we want to avoid. I would print that page and the next one and the next one and paste them on my wall above my computer at home, because this is exactly what you need to be thinking about when you're constructing your essays. They give you an example again of what doesn't work. And now look at these, lovely words. Look at these transitional words and phrases. So how do you get from box to box to box in your paragraph or explanation to example without it being clunky? Well, the answer is to start using these puppies here, these gorgeous words. Look at them. If you're adding or listing, showing a sequence, finally, previously, earlier. If you want to give examples, you don't have to keep saying for example. You can say for instance, yeah? Or chiefly. Look at the words you can use for contrast. Comparing, cause effect, emphasis, conceding a point, admittedly. My God, that word is hardly ever used in English 100 research essays. And it's so effective rhetorically. The moment the student says admittedly, they are demonstrating critical thinking, that they've said something, they've argued a point, but admittedly, you know, there's another point or something that needs to be considered. Yeah. The word you won't see here is the word although. Something very odd has happened to the word or the use of the word although in the last few years, and I have no idea what's going on at high school about this, but let me just put this on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Although I felt sick this morning, period. Is that a sentence? Can that be a sentence? And the answer is no. The reason is that when you use the word although in a sentence, you are setting up a dependent clause. Let me try and put that in an easier way. If you use although in a sentence, there better be a comma and another clause in the sentence. And so, for example, although I felt sick this morning, comma, I still went to class. You could switch it around. I still went to class, comma, although I felt sick this morning. But you see, it kind of operates like a pivot in sentence structure. And I think what's happening and why is that very often students are confusing the word although with the word however. However is a very useful and important word because that's how you can contrast, right? So, however, comma, although I felt sick, I still came to class. And that sort of contrasts with what you just said previously in the paragraph. If you don't understand what I've just said about the word although, then I guess you've got a choice. You can either Google it, explore it, get used to using it, or never use the word again. It's up to you, right? But be aware, it's a common problem. Okay, I want to go now to, I think, to page 38. Since we're here, page 34, do not use difficult words merely to impress your reader. Simple is often the way to go. Unless you're asked to write in informal style, do not use slang, conversational language, or contractions. Won't or doesn't. Just don't do it in academic writing. What works well in text messages will not fit in a formal academic paper, and that's because of the genre that we're in, okay? And you know all about that now. Number 4 is tricky, so just be aware. You know, you can write essays expressing a personal point of view in first person, or more formally. In your first assignment, rhetorical analysis, I was happy for you to use first person I just felt that would be helpful to you to tell me what what you think about something. I would prefer you, in fact, I want you in your research paper to write formally. The simple trick there is to use the word we instead of I. Yeah? Or you can just say it can be seen or it can be argued, but you just kind of find more of a distance in the way that you write. So that's what I'm telling you I want in your research paper. And in your other classes, just ask your instructor, what is it you want here? And that's probably the best way to do it, okay? The rest of this, I'm relying on you to read in your own time. I don't imagine we're going to have problems with inappropriate language. And here we come to page, what is it, page 38? Yeah, incorporating source material. Very important, because your research, say, is built around the stuff that you've read, the academic sources that you've read, okay? So there are really sort of two ways in which you can do this. The first is the paraphrase, which they take you to here, which is where you restate what a source says in your own words, creating a text of roughly the same length. Okay, fine, they show you how to do that and how not to do it. But I think in short academic papers, the like of which you're going to be writing an undergraduate level, it's far more likely that you're going to be doing summarizing rather than paraphrasing, because you need to condense stuff. I guess that's my point. So here we are, summary, like a paraphrase, states the contents of a source in your own words, but rather than producing a text of roughly the same length, you condense it to accurately capture only the writer's main ideas. So it's a central research skill, as they say here. It allows you to be efficient and economical. They give you some examples of how to go about doing this. Yeah, this I think is quite helpful in both cases of paraphrasing and summary. Read the passage carefully till you feel confident about what it's saying, and then begin the paraphrase or the summary. Break it into manageable sections if you want to. And you can see how they're using ellipsis here in number 2. I mean, that's a kind of simple way, isn't it, of condensing stuff. This single phrase, or reporting expression, or reporting verb, can be helpful in sort of dealing with this issue. And that's in bold here. So an interdisciplinary perspective is taken by Forst, who interprets romantic poetry through analogies with Kant's philosophy. And he says more, but that's all you want to say by way of summary. So you have the ellipsis, and then you have the page numbers here. Rather than analyzing language alone, Gilbert examines the whole visual presentation of the play, ... ellipsis. There you have the page references and the period. Okay. The big P word, plagiarism. Academic cheating, okay? You will be in big doo-doo if you do this. So it means passing off the words or ideas of others as your own. And you can see that there are two forms, I'm halfway down the page here, of plagiarism which commonly occur. The first, ideas might be taken from sources and presented as your own. So the clear solution here is to clearly attribute the ideas. And the second is although the ideas are documented, the actual words are lifted from someone else when they're not yours. And the solution here is be careful. And the easy solution here is to use quotes, right? I mean, that's the way to deal with this. And sometimes students say to me, but Ian, you know, that means my whole essay is going to be made up of quotes. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's your research. I mean, what's yours is the thesis. And, you know, the way in which you move from one quote to another or one source to another. The reference to the third type here of plagiarism is when students receive substantial help in writing a paper. That's just not going to work. Just last year, I had a student who came to me and said, but Ian, my girlfriend said I could use her essay. It's like, oh my God, you didn't say that. Please, just go. You know. All right, okay, let's not do any of that, all right? Quotes. That's the easy fix, guys, to all of this. There's something really important about how you should do it. Page 44. How long should your quotations be? Answer, not long. all right? Certainly not in a 4-page essay. And I sometimes get this. I get half a page of quote, and it's just telling me that the student is doing this, you know, in the middle of the night on a bottle of brandy or whatever, and they're just, they're just trying to guff their way through it. So yeah, not long at all. And so that's why you want to be using ellipsis. If it is longer than 4 lines, you would indent. But this is what I really want you to take away today. Apart from that paragraphing stuff, it's this. Short quotations should be fitted into your own sentence so that your words and the quoted words mesh grammatically. Here's an example. In most BC schools, comma, then you have the quote, then you have the writer and the reference. What a lot of you do, and I know this because it happens in so many research papers I get in English 100, is at the bottom here. You give me a sentence, period, and then you give me a quote as though it's a separate island. You can't do that, guys. It's got to be part of your sentence. So what would you do here? Few schools make good use of computers. That's a sentence, right? Subject, verb, complete thought. There's an object here. Followed by a quote. What do you use? Answer, colon. If you have a sentence followed by a quote, use a colon. Above, it's not a complete sentence, right? In most BC schools, that's not a sentence, so you use a comma. And sometimes, you wouldn't even need a comma. I mean, I think you could get away without having a comma there. You could just say in most BC schools, da 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 da, with the quote, without the comma. But I like the comma stylistically. But the big point is the one at the bottom here. You cannot have a sentence followed by a quote. You must have a colon, okay? Which I think is, well, you can see the fix here. However, comma, some teachers use computers effectively. That's a sentence followed by a quote, and so we've got a colon. All right? That's how to deal with quotes. Now, yeah, you can see the indentation here of a long quote, which I want you to try and avoid if you can, at least in this first research essay. Now I want to WAS all the way down to 82, so just bear with me here. Okay. Writing Center. Okay, so I hope you guys are using that, which is online and very active. Instructors there happy to help you. So check that out online. Library study, library, and you know all about that. And then we get to MLA style and documentation. So I'm really just revising here what we did in the last videos, page 82. All right, so this is step 1 that I told you about, sample in-text citation. So this is what you're going to go to when you're actually writing your essay and wanting to bring in your quotes. And if we just WAS down to non-print sources, here's step 2 that I told you about in the last video, the works cited entries, all these templates here. I think when we get to page 107, let's just scroll down a bit more. You can see how many different templates there are, particularly for non-print sources, okay? So just be aware of that. Okay. And yeah, this is what I wanted to take you to. So obviously many of you are going to prefer to do APA for your research essays. So you're going to go to page 107, but it's the same thing, guys, right? So it's like 2 steps. The first step, sample in-text citations. All right, so when you're writing your APA research essay, you're just going to turn to all of these, book by 1 author, 2 authors. It's just subtly different from the MLA, you know. Bollocks, but there we are. And now, instead of writing a works cited page in your APA essay, you're going to write a references page at the end. And here is going to be the template for all of that. Okay, book by one author, 2 or more, and so on and so forth. I don't need to hurt you anymore with this. Let me just go down to 121. Common writing errors. This is actually a really useful section, I think, for just quickly going through and revising some grammar. These on the left are the abbreviations, the little symbols that are used when we are marking essays, grading them. So you might well see me putting AGR on your paper, in which case you know what that's referring to. Subject and verb do not agree, or pronoun and antecedent do not agree. The number of abandoned cats is constantly increasing. A raccoon trailed by her cubs has raided our corn. You should train a dog while it is still a puppy, because it's singular, right? The student's paper, or students' paper, so you'd have the apostrophe before the S or after the S. This is a common error, actually. Years is plural, so there's no apostrophe. Anyway, I'll leave you to go through that in your own time. I want to do a bit on grammar in a moment. I'm nearly finished, but this is really helpful, I think. The sample student research paper, this is the MLA example. And I think this helps us too, because I often get questions about this from students. Referencing secondary sources. So students are often confused about how to cite a secondary source. That is when your source cites a previous source. So what you should do is give reference for the one that you've actually read. I think their example here is pretty clear. So if you found, for example, Arthur Miller's ideas about tragedy in your text by Burks, you would reference Burks, not Miller, as follows. So in your sentence, in Miller's view, comma, the common man is a useful subject for tragedy, but in brackets is the actual text you read, written by Burks. Okay, so that's the way you would deal with secondary sources. Now look at this research paper MLA style. This is what your research paper should look like when you send it to me. I don't think we need to go through this exhaustively. Some of you will find this actually quite a boring subject. Some will find it interesting, but it's really the way they integrate sources I want to look at here. So look at the top, Dr. Warren, and now you tell me who they are. An eating disorders specialist states that, it's all part of the same sentence. Here's the quote, and if you use square brackets, it's you telling me you're adding inside the quote. It's you and not the actual person. Or you're explaining in square brackets the way they've done it. Sometimes you often see this in online media, newspapers. There will be a quote from somebody and it actually contains a misspelling, and then it will be in square brackets. In other words, the editor's telling you that's not my mistake, it's theirs. And then you can see bracket quoted in Dunning 1 close bracket period. That's how you would deal with that. A few lines further down, clinical psychologist Richard A. Gordon, so full name, and now we know who he is. He's not just Joe Blow, he's some guy with an opinion. He's a clinical psychologist, explains why ballet dancers have specific demands to be thin. That's a sentence, guys, followed by a quote. So what do you use? Use a colon. And here the quote is longer than 4 lines, because it's quite a long essay. And so it's indented, period. See the brackets and the page number. And there's no period after the page number, it comes before. Okay. Again, L.M. Vincent, full name, a psychiatrist and former dancer. And here, everything flows in the same sentence. Describes ballet schools and dance companies as hot houses of competition, and he states that, and here we have the quote, but actually the student read this in the book by Gordon, or the article by Gordon, so it's quoted in Gordon 73-74, close brackets. Okay. The little comments in the margins are helpful to you here, hopefully. Some online references. Here's the use of ellipsis to kind of condense what it is you want to say. And this document in front of us right now is going to answer pretty much all the questions you're going to have in your mind when you're putting together your own research paper. And right at the end, of course, we get to our works cited page here. Everything listed alphabetically. And that's pretty much what your MLA research paper should look like. And now, importantly, I want to take you to the sample APA paper. Look what it should look like. And now work through this, and you can see how the references are done differently actually in the course of the essay itself. And now we have that final page, which is not works cited, it's called a references page. And so you can still alphabetically, but you can see how we have this differently formatted. All right. I think enough of that. What I want to do now, just to sort of end this class, is to look at this. This is something in the past I've given as a grammar quiz. I'm not going to do that formally, at least for marks in this online course. But I think what would be really helpful is if you were to just get a scrap of paper or do this on the screen, go through each of these 10 sentences, rewriting them so that they are grammatically correct. And of course, there will be different ways of doing it. But as long as the meaning stays the same, you should have 10 correct sentences. I would actually ask you to do that now. It's probably going to take you 15-20 minutes, just as I would ask students in class to do it. I'm going to pause, and then I'll come back and take you through the common mistakes that I get. All right, so I'll leave that with you for the next 15 minutes or so, and then we'll check in again. So I'm assuming that you've just gone through those 10 sentences, and as I've just said, of course, there are different ways of doing it, all right? I think what may be helpful here is if I take you through the common mistakes. So let's just look at number 1. And what if I was to tell you that about 80% of students who do this for me get the first word wrong? You know, that apostrophe just shouldn't be there, okay? Because there's nothing possessive here. Citizens is plural, and you don't put apostrophes on plurals unless you then have a possessive. You know, the students' paintings were damaged. The paintings belong to the students, plural, so the apostrophe would go after the S. Here, there's no possessive. So citizens may display their flags anytime they want to. And now here's our friend, the word although. There's got to be a comma here, guys. I mean, that's what you should take from this. If you're going to have the word although, there better be a comma floating around somewhere. So the correct fix is citizens may display their flags anytime they want to, comma, although it is traditional to fly them only from sunrise to sunset. You could begin the sentence with although. Although it is traditional to fly them only from sunrise to sunset, comma, citizens may display their flags anytime they want to. So the second common mistake here with number 1 is I get that first sentence, then I get the word although, and then the student puts comma. So capital A, although comma, it is traditional. This is wrong. What you would actually need there is the word however. So I'm really just repeating what I think I said a bit earlier in this video. Okay, so that's the danger word here. And actually number one is the one I think that most students get wrong. Number two, if you have a sentence in English and it begins with a word that ends with ing, you are going to need a comma down the track, right? Because it's setting up a dependent clause. This is not a sentence. Coming in a variety of complex styles and costing as much as $100 or more, period. That is not a sentence. Because you begin it with the word coming. Coming, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, comma, finish. So the correct fix here is a comma after the word more. Kites are not just or aren't just child's play anymore. And this is idiomatic. Sometimes I find second language students write just a child's play. That's wrong, it's idiomatic. Child's play is a phrase that we have. But the sort of the trap with number two is all to do with that sentence structure issue and the word coming. Number three, well, I hope you can see the error. The problem at the moment is we've got two sentences joined by what? Just a comma. What do we call that? We call it a comma splice. It's not strong enough. Many different ways you could fix number three. Iceman was about 40 years old, period. Or semicolon. Or comma and. I don't like that so much, but I love the period or the semicolon here. Another mistake would be to put a comma before the word and. The point is here that scientists determined his age by doing two things, not one more important than the other, and not more than two things. It's two things, equally important. They did it by measuring tooth wear and certain traits of its bones. There's no comma needed here at all. Okay. Number four is fine, actually, the way it is. You don't need to do anything with number four. That's a bit sneaky, isn't it? But and you could begin the sentence with the word however. However, comma, for spouses of US citizens, comma, that would be a parenthetical element then. The required residence period is only 3 years. Number five is a fragment, isn't it? I mean, again, the alarm bell should ring when you have not just a word now, but a phrase, an ing phrase, by studying comma, finish. All right, so by studying the nutritional labels on food and calculating the amount of grams and calories in grams daily, comma, and you need to add some words here. We can live a healthier life. Okay, period. So this is where you need to add words to deal with the fragment. And again, I make the same point. It's not one thing or the other. The two things are necessary, so there's no comma in front of and here. Number six, one of the objects is mysterious. I mean, you see that's a sentence, right? You see the next one as a sentence. You see this as a comma splice, so we need a period, or we need a semicolon. And that deals with that. Number seven, no other flag may be flown above or to the right of the US flag. That's a sentence. We have a period. That's fine. But the word except causes all sorts of problems here because now you don't have a sentence. Except at the UN headquarters in New York City, comma, no other flag may be flown to the right or above the US flag. Or you just put a comma after the word flag, comma, except at. All right? But that second element here is clearly not a standalone sentence. That's what you needed to have seen. Number eight, Chris, well, now it's possessive, right? The job belonged to Chris, so clearly we need an apostrophe after the S. Chris's summer job was to stock shelves and do something else, not one or the other, less important, not a list of more than two, it's to do two things equally important. So no comma here, all right? Yes, comma, I'd love to own a convertible. Pretty much everybody gets that one right. And the next one, it's not terribly clear here on the text, is it? But at the moment, we've got a semicolon, which is not going to work because long, short, flat, and irregular is not a sentence. So I keep trying to impress upon you, think about semicolons as if they're periods, separating two independent clauses. Here, it's not doing that. So the human body has 206 bones that come in 4 general shapes as follows. When you feel yourself saying as follows, put in a colon, dot above a dot, and then you have a list, all right? Whoopie-doo, we're done with that. Okay, final thing today. It's just another, and it's the last time I'm going to do this. Thank God for all of us, right? This MLA little quiz that I sometimes have given students in the past. And I think we should do the same thing, guys. I think it's going to help, isn't it? If you just work through this on your own, going through the CAP guide. This is MLA, so I think you're probably going to turn to around page 84, 85, 86, I can't remember. But that's where you get step 2, the works cited, formatting and templates. So go through this as if you were in class, because I ask students to do this in class, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll give you the answers, all right? So I'll leave that with you. And so now here we have the answers on the right-hand side of the screen. And all I've done is find the templates, and pretty much the same templates that we looked at in the last video, okay? And just reformatted everything. But you can see I put it now into alphabetical order. And if we look at the first one, we've got this essay, and it has a title. And this is what I was telling you about last time. Think about boxes inside boxes. So there's an essay, which we're going to be putting in quotation marks, but it's in a bigger book, a bigger publication, all right? So we deal with the essay in quotation marks, period. And then the bigger publication, the main publication, the long march to Marxism, is what we put in italics. We could underline it, but italics. Then you put in the edited section by Sheila Delaney, comma, publisher, date, and so on. Second one, easy peasy, right? I mean, just author, book in italics, publisher, date. Third one, yeah, this is with continuous pagination, so you would find that template. You have the author. And again, I mean, the common mistakes I get when students do this in assignment is they get things the wrong way around. So quite often, a student will begin with the rhetoric and they'll underline that, or they italicize that, and then they just put the rhetor. It's the wrong way around. It's what's inside something else is what you need to be thinking about here. Another common mistake here is that students don't get the subtitle. It's not just the rhetor, it's the rhetor colon, and then you have the subtitle, A Journal of Modern Communications. And you need to write a journal, because that would be what you would see on the front page of the journal. That's its title, okay? And then there's fiddly stuff, you know, volume 13, comma either side, 1998. Yeah, I mean, you just need to do it, right? Get it right. Next one, number 4, we've got a lecture, so you can see how that's done. And I've just used whatever date I could think of as today's date. And then finally, you have the newspaper article inside the actual newspaper, which is what you will then italicize, and then you have the date as you can see. All right, okay, I think we've had quite enough of that, haven't we? So what we will do in the next video is turn to political language, and there'll be hopefully a couple of helpful texts that will help you to analyze political speeches. And then something towards the end of the video next time on the canons of rhetoric and how they can help us actually organize a paper and get going on that. All right, okay. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you next time.